folks visit.
Now it's super fresh.
Getting this ready. Boom! It's Hot Mike, and this is Festival Rap Notes. Mike and Vanessa talking about festivals.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi.
We have a special one today.
Yeah. What did we just watch?
Gimme Shelter.
Yes, just watched Gimme Shelter, about the Rolling Stones and the Altamont Speedway concert that was a disaster. Certainly one way you can say it. But to give a little background on the cultural climate, what was going on at that time, what this festival actually signified and represents. This came 4 months after Woodstock, which
Okay.
Woodstock was a disaster.
Right? Like, that's well-known fact.
Yeah, like the National Guard had to come in, and people didn't have water. There was no food. There were barely any facilities.
And yet some people got born at Woodstock, right?
I think so. Yeah, there were births.
Maybe a few deaths.
I can't. Yeah, I don't have the stats on that, but it was seen as a peace and love success. The Rolling Stones organized something 4 months later, and it was going to be Woodstock of the West, and it was going to be at Golden Gate Park. And the Rolling Stones and the Grateful Dead, they were going to be the headliners. Those were the two names of the concert. They were the biggest draws, but they also had the likes of Jefferson Airplane, Santana, the Flying Burrito Boys, which I'm not very familiar with them.
But they were a big deal at the time.
Yeah.
I've heard that name.
Yeah, I've seen those records kicking around.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you know them? Are you
No.
familiar with their music?
Only might have actually just read a reference to them in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by Quentin Tarantino.
Great book.
But that's not this episode.
No, but it is of this era. It is winter of '69. The Tate Labianca murders had happened earlier that year in August. So this was, this was a cultural movement that was really spiraling out of control. And at the recommendation of the Grateful Dead and, I believe, Jefferson Airplane, to hire the Hells Angels as security. Now, they recommended this because they had the Hells Angels work as security for a number of their concerts without incident. The big difference was the Hells Angels weren't like on the stage with the band. They were just kind of a barrier. They were basically front row seats from what I read, what I understand. And the agreement was, so they invite the Hells Angels, and when they were in negotiation for how would we be compensated for this, they asked the Hells Angels, well, how can we compensate you? How can we compensate you for this service that you're going to provide?
Yeah.
And they said, well, we like beer. So they bought $500 worth of beer and just let these guys drink beer all day and enjoy the show. But they also parked their motorcycles right in front of the stage. There's no barriers. There's no barricades. So it's just the crowd pushing up against the stage, climbing over their motorcycles. These guys saw their bikes, which is basically
Their livelihood.
absolutely getting trampled and abused. And so they just start beating people up. And they seem to pull pool cues out of nowhere. And they're just cracking people over the head with it. So apparently, Santana was the opening act on the first day, and apparently things were like the crowd was getting a little bit more agitated as the show went on, as the day went on, and it seemed to be when the Flying Burrito Boys played, people were calm, people were having a good time. That seems to be the best of the event, was the Flying Burrito Boys. Like that they had maybe the best version of this crowd before the Angels really started taking it out on the crowd.
And before the drugs kicked in.
Yeah. Well, as you see in Gimme Shelter, I mean, I've never seen so many people losing their mind on LSD and they're completely naked. They're nowhere near their clothes. In your experience, you have far more music festival experience than I do. I've been to some shows, I've worked a concert series, but I haven't seen these big events like you have. In all your time, have you ever seen somebody without their clothes completely, just out of their mind on drugs?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow. Was it at the first aid tent? Is that where you were seeing them?
No, it was in the middle of a crowd.
Wow.
Yeah. It was at a smaller stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to specify, like, my music festival experience is more than the average bear, but I know a lot of veterans who have seen so many more shows than me.
Sure.
But I have seen that. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's such a familiar vibe in this documentary that when you're looking at Altamont and you're seeing just all the kids and they're just standing in a field, listening to music, drinking, and talking, and
passing joints, passing jugs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's the same vibe today.
Yeah.
The difference is they learned from stuff like this in the past, and were able to better build and control the festival environment with bike barricades and
signage. And there's a great moment where the camera's passing through this dense crowd of people, and you can hear somebody say, "Hey, which way's the stage, man?" Like, it was so many people they couldn't even see what direction. Well, there was only one stage. These days, when you gather that many people, you have to have multiple stages. Because honestly, so some stats on this, details. Altamont Speedway was the location that they picked because they couldn't do it at Golden Gate Park. When they were looking at the numbers of the people who were going to attend, it couldn't take place within the city. It couldn't take place within the park. So now they're looking for an alternative location. They come up with this speedway that is nearby, near the city, called Altamont. They chose... I actually think the date was picked so that some of these acts who were on tour at the time could be a part of this. I actually think Jefferson Airplane might have been the band that was kind of holding up the date, but it ended up being set for December 6th. Really, it was it was supposed to be a weekend. It ended up being a one-day event, and estimated 300,000 kids came to it.
Dang.
Yeah. Can you imagine 300,000 people trying to crowd around one stage?
Actually, that's like 3 Bonnaroos.
It's insane.
Like, that is more people than I've seen in one place.
Yeah.
Yeah. The most I've seen was probably at Bonnaroo. That's a little over 100,000 people on site. And that's with like 8 stages. Yeah. At least.
Wow.
And tiny little secret stages and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So those are the numbers. It gives you kind of a size and shape of this thing. And so the day's progressing. Now we're into the afternoon, and Jefferson Airplane hits the stage. And they're having a great set. Grace Slick, she's so cool. She's so effing cool.
Coolest.
Yeah.
It sounded amazing.
They're having a great set.
Yeah.
And some scrums, so a little violence is breaking out in the first few rows. And you can't quite tell what's happening. You just see the response to the melee is a complete overreaction from the Hells Angels. And they really do. Like, you see people trying to keep the peace. Like, there's this poor guy who's like, his hands are up. He's in a non-threatening position whatsoever. And he's like trying to protect a guy who's being stomped on the ground and asking Hells Angels to like, hey man, peace, brother, peace. And he gets cracked in the back of the head with a pool cue. He goes down and they're kicking him. It just doesn't make sense, the violence. And I mean, these Hells Angels are they're animals. And they're drunk animals. Like, they're fueled on beer. And so yeah. Anyways, the violence kind of spills onto the stage. So like, they're not the only ones who are going crazy. There's people in the crowd that are really tuned up on drugs, and it just, it's not going well. The violence spills onto the stage. Marty Ballin, who's the male lead vocalist for Jefferson Airplane, he gets accidentally knocked out by one of the Hells Angels. I don't know if he just thought he was a guy who shouldn't be on the stage because everybody looks like a hippie. Like, you can't tell Marty Ballin from anyone else. The only ones you can differentiate are the Hells Angels, because they're the only ones who have a uniform. Yeah. And I guess hippie's kind of a uniform.
But it's a confusing one if everyone's dressed that way.
True.
Yeah.
So that's a real tipping point where, okay, now musicians are being injured. And it's by the Hells Angels. So these guys are hired to protect, and now they're actually doing a lot of harm. The day goes on. The Rolling Stones arrive via helicopter. They have to. There's no, like, all the roads are shut down to get in here. It's before it starts. It's a disaster. And man, I think you can relate to, like, seeing the setup and seeing everything. It's coming together as an event, but you're imagining the number of people that are going to come, and you're like, it's this ominous feeling, this feeling of terror and dread, where you're like, I mean, this could all go sideways.
Yeah, there's a tidal wave on its way to you, whether you're ready for it or not. And it actually reminds me of talking about Fire Festival and those poor workers who knew people were showing up to a disaster, and yet in this case, at least, it's a free concert. Yeah, no one paid thousands of dollars to be there. There was no false social media advertising about what they were going to get. So true. Yeah. Yep. This was, people knew what they were getting because it was billed as Woodstock of the West. And Woodstock was where on the East Coast? New York. That's right. Yep. Woodstock, New York. So is the idea that there were a lot of kids at Woodstock who then drove across the country to go to Altamont? They did this westward pilgrimage. Sounds awesome. To San Francisco. Yeah. Which was the hippie Mecca. And this really was seen like, we're closing out the decade. And this could be the best party of the decade or of the year. Like, they thought Woodstock, I really think that they believed that they had learned from Woodstock. And like, okay, we're going to have more of the infrastructure in place that we can support this gathering of people, and we can all be peaceful, because Woodstock was kind of this great experiment. And a lot of people were peaceful. Like, a lot of people seemed like they were having a great time. Even the ones towards the front. Like, it wasn't... Yeah, well, that's a good point. The vast majority of people were there to have a good time and to get a buzz and love on each other, and it could have been great. Yeah. But with that many people, and especially with only one stage, like if you've ever been in a mosh pit or towards the front of that big of a concert, you know that the crowd can sometimes push you forward, whether you want to move forward or not, when you're that close to the front. Oh, you can literally get picked up. Like, as a small woman, you might get picked up and just carried with the crowd. You're stressing me out. Sorry. I can't imagine being in a crowd of people anymore. It's the most claustrophobic thing I can think of. Yeah. And I will say, when we were watching the movie, I said to you, now that I'm a number of years removed from putting on large events like this, this is one of my favorite films of all time, whether it's a documentary or any. I love this film. Watching it this time, I was very uncomfortable looking at just the people and seeing the violence erupt, and you don't have an exit. You don't have a way out of this. You're surrounded by people. I was
was feeling very anxious watching it this time.
I remember we watched this film pretty early on when we started dating.
Yeah.
And when you brought it up and kept bringing it up as like, I really love this movie and would love to show it to you, I was reluctant because all I thought of it was, a show about a concert.
Oh, okay.
And I tend to not be into to filmed concerts. Like I either want to be there or I'm not really that interested. It's a little bit boring. But once you actually got me into it, I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't just the show. It's the disaster around the show and seeing how it all unfolds. Who directed this?
Oh, this is the legendary Maisel brothers.
Oh, they did an incredible job with telling the story and the way you get to see Mick Jagger react to some of the footage is just haunting.
Yes. So the way the film is set up is that it starts with live footage of the Rolling Stones on the East Coast, starting their North American tour, which would end at Altamont Speedway. So they were going from east to west, and it would end in San Francisco. And the way that it starts is you're watching this live footage, but the band is actually in the editing room with the Maisels. And the Maisels are filming them watch themselves as the movie is cut together, which I think is fascinating. And it's indicative of their style, which was they were really, I wouldn't say pioneers, but they did good work in the cinema verite genre of documentary filmmaking. Cinema verite means truth in film. So it was a movement where filmmakers were trying to get the most objective, non-biased truth out of the story that they were telling. And it's really been, which it's a great movement. I think it's a fascinating artistic pursuit. Ultimately, it's not possible. There has to be bias in order for you to cut a film. You are making choices. You're making choices on what direction the camera's pointing at. But what they're trying to do is be a fly on the wall. And I think that's what you're saying. Like, they did that so well, where you kind of feel like you're in the room with these guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love those production meetings they're having about Altamont leading up to it, and you're hearing the property owner ask about where these kids gonna park, and and my favorite is when you actually hear a Hell's Angels dude on the phone talking about what happened.
Sonny Barger. Yeah, that's his name. Yep.
That time, and at the concert when Jefferson Airplane is like letting people know what just happened with their lead singer. One of the Hells Angels grabs a hot mic.
Yeah.
A hot mic.
Uh-huh.
and and starts talking.
I hope he didn't grab. Don't grab me, man.
Stay away. No, it was really cool just to hear a Hells Angels dude talk both those times, because it's exactly what you'd expect.
Yeah.
That macho attitude, like, hey man, this is on you. This isn't on me.
Yeah, they talk like hippies that'll kick the shit out of you.
Yeah.
Like, actually, and I thought when that guy jumped on the microphone, because, so it's the lead guitarist for Jefferson Airplane, and I don't remember that artist's name, but he gets on the microphone. He's just like, hey, I'd like to thank the Hells Angels for punching our lead singer Marty Ballin in the face and knocking him out. I'd like to thank you for that. And you see this Hells Angels dude, because they're just kind of like scratching their chins, like, what's this guy saying? Like, this guy's starting shit. And he runs over and gets on a microphone. He's like, hey, is this thing on? And he's like, you talking to me? I'm going to talk to you. He goes, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the guy who punched my lead singer. He's like, you're talking to my people. And he's like, you know what's happening? You're what's happening. And then just when he's mid-sentence, another melee breaks out in the crowd. Yeah. And the attention kind of goes back to the crowd. And it's a disaster. The sun goes down, and the Stones take the stage. Actually, one quick sidebar. When the Stones arrived, and they get off the helicopter and they're being escorted through these crowds of people to their little trailers, somebody breaks through Mick Jagger's like security and punches him in the face. You can barely see it on film, but you can see Mick's reaction, and it's like big red flag right out the gate. Big red flag. So the day just continues to progress or digress and just get worse and worse. Progression, digression. I don't know how to say it in this one. But by the time they hit the stage, it's just been a long day of shit. The Rolling Stones, I think, had a great quote, and they said it was a day when everything went perfectly wrong. So it's just like a series of things. Just nothing was happening. By the time the Stones take the stage, it was kind of at a boiling point. And as you see in the film, the Stones can't. I think they start and stop "Sympathy for the Devil" 3 or 4 times. They have to keep stopping because the violence is getting too bad, like right in front of them. And there's spotlights right on those first few rows of people. I say rows, like there were rows. There was just a mob.
Feet of people.
Well, and the organizers, the promoters, I read, they think that it was about 4,000 people crammed up right in that front area. There was about 4,000 people that were involved, victims of this, or yeah. But that's just mind-blowing when you see that tiny of a space and you think of cramming that many people in. And then once a fight breaks out, people are running from the violence. Where do you go?
There's nowhere to go except over a sea of people.
I can't believe more people didn't die. So the stats on the deaths is there were 4 deaths. One we're about to talk about, and is the stabbing death of, I've got his name, Meredith Hunter. A man named Meredith.
Okay.
Have you ever known a man named Meredith?
I have not.
I didn't know that was
I didn't either.
a name that went both ways.
Now I do.
Yeah. So Meredith Hunter was murdered. He was stabbed to death by a Hell's Angel. 2 of the deaths were in a hit and run on the road. A car struck 2 of the young kids, and they were killed. And the 3rd was in an LSD-related drowning in a nearby like irrigation duct. So
okay.
LSD is a hell of a drug. Yeah.
That tracks.
So those and apparently 4 babies were born. So can you imagine
+4 -4
being
oh my God.
that pregnant and thinking going to a concert is a good idea, and then you're like, oh shit, this baby's coming right now. I don't know.
Are you Southern and pregnant?
I don't know. She was.
I came all the way from Texas to see this concert. I'm not going to let this baby stop me.
That was good.
Thank you.
That was spot on. So what happened with Meredith Hunter was, and you can kind of see him, well, he's very recognizable. He's wearing a lime green suit. There are a lot of different, suit, hat, it's the works. I mean, it's said that he was a pimp from L.A. I don't know if it said that just because he looks like a pimp from L.A.
Did look like that.
He's got the whole getup minus like the big feather and a cane.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently he had conflict with the Hells Angels, and they had punched him, kicked him, and he was very close to the like front of the stage, and he gets abused by the Hells Angels. He leaves kind of where he was, front of the stage, and he's with his girlfriend, and she's pleading with him to calm down. Witnesses say that he was out of his mind on drugs and could barely walk. There's a lot of different stories. As I was looking this up, there's some people that defend him, that say that he was just acting as self-defense. But what he did was he didn't let it go, and he went back to the front of the stage to basically confront the guys who had tuned him up earlier. And they get into it again, and he pulls a revolver. And this is all on film. You see him pull the revolver, and he raises his arm and immediately gets stabbed in the back multiple times.
It's almost like the Hells Angels guy, like, put down the arm with the gun while reaching behind with the knife.
It's incredibly effective.
It was so effective and so haunting.
It's yeah. It actually, that is haunting. That is a haunting part of it, is how good that guy was at killing Meredith Hunter.
Yeah,
like,
that wasn't the first time
effortless.
he'd done something like that.
Yeah, used a knife. Like, there was no pause. There was no hesitation.
This is just the first time there was a camera.
Yeah. I mean, I would be surprised if he would move faster than some Secret Service agents. Like, he was just like, gun. I know what to do. Yeah. So disturbing, and sad and tragic that, this was this guy's end. He was 18 years old too.
Oh, terrible.
Yeah. Super sad. He was, apparently he went down to the ground. They started kicking him. And, by the time he got to they pulled him away from the Hells Angels, meaning the people in the crowd, carried him to first aid. By the time a doctor got there, they had to pronounce him. So the Stones are seeing this. They're stopping. They're talking to the audience and to the crowd and trying to calm everybody down. They continue to play. It's a much shortened version of their show. I think they only get a couple of numbers out. Like, I think they maybe play 4 or 5 songs. They exit the stage and immediately get on a helicopter. So there's no going back to the trailers, resting up so we can have a killer day tomorrow. It was like, no, this is over.
No, they were jumping into the helicopter.
Yeah. Oh, and they pile like way more people on than probably should have in a whirlybird. And yeah, they take off and get out of there. And then it's a mass exodus, and everybody disbands, and it's all over the news the next day as this incredible disaster. Yeah. So that is I guess summing up what the story is. Some of the takeaways and really the fascinating parts about being a fly on the wall for the story. Like you said, we get to sit in on contract meetings where they're negotiating basically space. They're negotiating, okay, if you're gonna be on my property, on my speedway, I want the assurance of the Rolling Stones that every blade of grass that is torn down, I want it built back up. Like, you basically have to hand me back my speedway exactly how I give it to you. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating to see those conversations, and then the logistics around like a production meeting. Yeah. How are we actually going to do this? And I found it funny, like, the level of optimism in the room was so low. Like, I didn't feel like a lot of people were like, this is going to be great. Like, we're going to be heroes for this festival. No, it was just like worry and dread on everybody's face. And they're coming. Like, we don't have a location locked in, but they're driving across the country right now. And they were giving numbers and figures. They were like, we have word that 25,000 people are about to descend on San Francisco. But it's so many more came. Yeah. It just became this. But I just thought it was curious how it didn't seem like they were confident that they could pull it off, and I don't think they could, or they didn't. yeah, I don't know.
I was so curious. Part of me is desperately curious to know, after hearing the contract conversations around the blade of grass has to be put back. What happened after the festival? Was the property put back to rights, or, how long did that take?
Yeah.
I would like, there's the administrator in me who really wants to know
Mm-hmm.
how long that took, how expensive it was, or if they got away with not following through.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We certainly had that with the Twilight concert series in Salt Lake City. We were, I was not a part of Twilight concert series when it was at the Galveston Center.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Galveston.
Yeah. Okay. I got that right. Cool.
You did. Nailed it.
That is a really cool venue. So I bet it was really fun the years that it was there, but limited space.
Mm-hmm.
It could only be so big. So they moved it to Pioneer Park. And Pioneer Park, beautiful park in its own right. Its proximity to social services and homeless shelters was too close for it not to become Bum Island. Like, it was just, this is where 25 or 30 people live full time. Yeah. And so we'd have to displace them for a couple of nights each week. So they loved Twilight. But we would put somewhere between 20 and some of the bigger shows were 60,000 people or so into this park. Beautiful park, beautiful grass. And it would get trampled and the grass would be destroyed. And each week or several times throughout the summer, we've got landscaping crews hired to come in and reseed and stuff like that. Where, like, yeah, the contract is you have to give us back the space the way it's given to you. Like, this is a park. We can't just completely destroy it. So I'm wondering what they had to do and who had to deal with it. There is a prologue missing from the Gimme Shelter doc, where we don't quite know what happened afterwards. What is the aftermath?
I'm sure there's more stuff out there like this, but what I really love about this documentary is that it's giving me something my brain's been wanting since getting into festivals, like getting into Bonnaroo and Outside Lands and learning. I never actually got to go to Burning Man, but I know all about it. Have a lot of friends who did. And kind of seeing where festivals are now. I also love history, and I want to know, like, how did we get here? Mm-hmm. Like, what were festivals like leading up to this? And when I read, a really amazing nonfiction book about the Chicago World's Fair, Devil in the White City.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
That, it's about the serial killer at the Chicago World's Fair, but
H.H. Holmes.
But it's also about the guy who designed the fair, like the actual architect of this space and of this experience, his monumentous undertaking, and creating the first what we call, like, when you're at a music festival, Shakedown Street.
Yeah.
Which is basically just like a thoroughfare of shops that leads into the festival grounds, where, like, this is where I can go to get food and look at some really cool stuff. That started at the Chicago World's Fair. That was also where they had the very first Ferris wheel. Okay. Was for the Chicago World's Fair. So, cool. And that's kind of a staple of every music festival, is a Ferris wheel.
Okay.
And so I had it in I was like, man, I wish I could watch a movie or a documentary about the Chicago World's Fair. I would love to get my hands on that, but of course that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But the Gimme Shelter, is a stepping stone for where we got. And it's like, wow, this is what it was like before all of these things that I do now.
Absolutely. And I think it seems like Woodstock became the model. I mean, to improve on the model, but that became like, this is what I want to do with my festival. Even the fact that Altamont was labeled Woodstock of the West. It's like Woodstock is now infamous. Not infamous. No. Altamont is infamous. Woodstock is legendary. Like it was something to aspire to. And it was modeled after some of these smaller successful pop festivals like Monterey Pop, Miami Pop, where the likes of Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix, where they really blew up and they were like making a name for themselves. Those became, I guess, the tiny little testers. Woodstock became this thing that that seems like a success in the through the lens of history. Like I think we talk about Woodstock. People talk about Woodstock in a more positive light. And then Altamont is the evil twin of it that really was the disaster.
Like AFI and TCM.
Oh, is AFI the evil twin of TCM?
Heck yeah, it is.
I like that. That's a hot take. I like that. I lost my train of thought. If I'm being perfectly honest.
That's okay. What I really
I was gonna Shakedown Street.
Oh,
I can just think of the Grateful Dead song.
Yes. One of the best, in my opinion.
Don't you hate when people assume that you like the Grateful Dead? What is it about Grateful Dead fans that they're blind to the fact that some people don't care about their band? Like, I love the Rolling Stones. It's one of the reasons this is one of my favorite movies, favorite documentaries of all time. But I would never assume that somebody likes the Stones.
Well, that's because you're better about not making assumptions.
Maybe that is.
And I think you have a little more self-awareness than most deadheads. But there is a bit of an assumption there, where if you like music festivals, I can just assume you like Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
That's been going on for a while, I think.
I'm not into jams. I'm not in your band. I don't want to jam with you, bro. You know what I mean? We're just like, we took this 5-minute song and we turned it into 45 minutes.
Actually, knowing your opinion about live music is another reason why I was surprised you really love this movie.
Yeah.
But it's more than just concert footage, and that is where it is. It's a story, and you get these really wonderful moments. I guess the cinema verite you were talking about.
Cinema verite, yeah.
Where you just get to kind of feel like you're in the room with the Stones as they're hearing a single they just recorded for the first time.
Ooh, that is a great sidebar transition. Is what they were doing, what the Stones were doing along the way. So as they're doing this North American tour and they start in New York City and you see a sold out Madison Square Garden, it looks insane. It's like that concert. I could watch a whole movie just about that concert. Like it's that has incredible footage. So much fun to see. And it's just crazy when they turn on the house lights and you see MSG just packed to the gills. Oh, it's incredible. Then they start traveling. They travel south and west. And what they're doing is they're hitting all of these legendary blues recording houses along the way. And they're recording their album Sticky Fingers. So what you're talking about is we get to be a fly on the wall as they're listening to the first recording of Wild Horses, or they go back to their hotel room later that night and on a reel-to-reel they're listening to their first recording of Brown Sugar, and they're in the room just dancing it up and having a good time and having drinks. It is really special to be a part of that.
So much fun.
Or to be able to be witness to that. Oh God, and the fact that they chose all of these classic blues houses, I think is, I think it shows what the roots that they have in rhythm and blues. And you and I were talking about, you were asking me who's Mick Taylor, because you're like, wait. Are there two Micks in the Rolling Stones? And I didn't know it. There were. There aren't now, which is crazy that I'm saying now. Yes, 2021, the Rolling Stones are still a band. That's insane. So Mick Taylor was very new to the band. Mm-hmm. Brian Jones is the founder of the Rolling Stones. And Brian Jones kind of recruited Keith and Mick. And then I think the rest of the band kind of came together with Bill Wyman and Charlie Watts within a number of years later. But it was kind of the three of them, Brian, Keith, and Mick. And Brian was the creative and driving force to the band's creation. And he insisted that they be a rhythm and blues band. So when he would go to the record store, and I think Keith was also a major influence in that too, because he loved American blues. And there's a whole UK movement where these incredible blues musicians come out of the UK because of the influence of Black American music, primarily the blues. Like Eric Clapton's another one. Mm-hmm. Eric Clapton's an incredible blues guitarist, but it's like, how did you get that way? Oh, well, it's through American music and loving Black music.
I didn't know Eric Clapton was British.
He is.
This is amazing. It's also like I didn't know Van Morrison was a redhead. I had no idea.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Just don't look these things up.
That's fair. Hey, that's fair. You're not Clapton's biographer. You don't need to know that.
No.
But Brian Jones he'd gone so deep into drugs by the late 60s. It was a real problem for the Stones. And what you don't see is what a shrewd businessman Mick Jagger was. So there's kind of a funny how it's been described or how I've read the dynamic in the Stones is that behind the scenes, off stage, Mick Jagger is actually very reserved, and he is the business mind of the band. On stage, he gets on stage and he comes alive, and he becomes the Mick Jagger that we know. He becomes this wild man. And for Keith Richards on stage, he's very reserved. He's kind of stone-faced. He's out there to do a job. I mean, he's into the music, but he's not the spectacle. Mm-hmm. That's on Mick. Mm-hmm. Off stage, backstage, that's kind of who Keith is this wild man who commands attention. He's the life of the party kind of guy, and so there's this interesting dichotomy between the two of them, and there's a reason that they're so successful and they're still touring to this date in 2021, and it's the business savvy of Mick Jagger. Well, he saw that their founding member, Brian Jones, was becoming a liability to their product. And so he fired Brian Jones, and they hired Mick Taylor. Sadly, Brian Jones died a number of months later, and it's under mysterious circumstances. He was found floating in his pool, like face down in his pool. And they think he went swimming when he was really, really high on heroin, and he just drowned. But there's a story that he had a very complicated relationship with his gardener, his landscaper. Like they had a friendship that like kind of turned contentious. And on his deathbed, his gardener's deathbed, fucking years and years later, he admitted to killing Brian, to drowning him.
What?
They got in a fight, and they were down at the pool in the gardens, and he drowned him in the pool.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if that's true, but Brian Jones, founding member of the Rolling Stones, met a very sad demise right around the time of this concert. So Mick Taylor was very new to the band and probably new to being in front of crazy throngs of people like this.
I would assume so, unless he came from some other
super
incredible
group.
Band.
Yeah, this is besides the Beatles,
no one's
and the Grateful Dead,
this kind of attention.
Yeah, those were kind of the juggernauts at this time.
And then came Queen, of course.
Queen, yeah,
and David Bowie, and Prince.
Yeah,
but these were the first.
Yeah, and this was still a little dirty and kind of dirty rock. I like those groups that were coming in with Bowie and Queen. Like things started getting a little more glamorous. It was good. It was a good shift for the 70s. But this really marked, a lot of people have said like this was the death of the hippie movement. This truly was the death, which was already waning because the summer prior, so this is December of 69, August of 69, the Tate Labianca murders took place. Yeah. And that really put a spotlight on hippies. And it was a turning point where people were no longer seeing this as a movement that was something you can just turn your nose up to and like, God, these dirty hippies, they won't cut their hair. Or as Rick Dalton says, fucking hippie motherfuckers. Just with complete disdain. Yeah. This really put the nail in the coffin, I think. The movement was kind of dead after this.
Understandably. I mean, you asked me if I had seen that kind of drug-induced behavior and nudity at other shows, and the answer is yes. But like the ratio is different now. Back in this scene, like the footage of Altamont makes it look like 1 in 5, 1 in 10 people were just going crazy on drugs. Yeah. Which is such a high ratio. And the concerts that I've been at in my lifetime in the last 10 years, I saw probably like 1 in 100 people freaking out like that. Okay. Like it's a smaller faction. It is always there. Yeah. There's always a couple crews at least who come to a festival with the sole intent of getting as high as they can, having a great time, and getting to meet other people, having a great time. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's still the same thing. It's still a bunch of people getting together, standing around, shooting the shit and listening to music. And what do you get out of it? Well, you can say you were there. That's a big thing people get out of it. FOMO. You want to be able to say you were there. But then you get friendships. You get these incredible stories. You can say, oh my gosh, I saw this crazy thing happen to a festival. And hopefully that's your story and not this crazy thing happened to me at a festival. Because I've heard some terrible things that have happened to people at festivals. I've also heard people meet the love of their life, or, you know, their best friend, or, you know, they realize they were taking their life in a wrong direction, or, you know, they've gotten something out of it. And it's, so it can be a lot of different things for different people. But I do think it looks different, but it is it's the same thing with the same problems, same security issues, making sure people are hydrated, making sure they have access to all the things that they should have as a human being. And
you talking about toilets?
Yeah, I'm talking about porta potties.
Yeah.
Porta johns.
Yeah. People don't realize how many you need. How many, I mean, I've certainly never been involved in any kind of event that's this large, but I can't even imagine the amount of accommodations needed to adequately support 300,000 attendees.
I just wish we had cameras all over the grounds. I mean, we really only see the action by the stage. Like, what else is happening out there?
Sure, and a relatively small film crew. Like, I'm not quite sure how many camera operators the Maisels had that were moving around this, but we get these little glimpses, which makes for these little vignettes, and they're fascinating.
They are.
The people that you encounter, and some of those interactions early in the day are very appealing, and you're like, oh man, this looks like they're having a great time.
Great time.
Yeah, it just, things just keep escalating. I was talking about camera operators. I believe that, I hope this is true, that Martin Scorsese was a camera operator for Woodstock, the movie.
Oh.
So he was at Woodstock, and he was one of the guys capturing. Like, he was one of the young up-and-coming filmmakers. Boy, after this, I want to double check. I want to see if I'm actually correct on that. But I remember hearing that or reading that, and really finding that fascinating. Like, before he had really done much of anything, he had his finger on the pulse of like what was happening within music, which that's kind of his MO. Is he's part of the film renaissance, which really ties in, like, it's modern films using modern music. So soundtracks became not so much scores, not so much these big orchestral scores that were so popular in the 30s, 40s, 50s, is that in this revolution, they start bringing in the music that is popular to a younger generation. And so the fact that he was tuned in to what the hippie movement was all about and what they were listening to, what it sounded like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does. Can I ask you a favor?
What's up?
Will you do a Mick Jagger impersonation for me?
No.
Oh, come on.
You put me on the spot.
Do the line at the end.
Who's fighting and a what for? There, that's my Mick.
That's good.
He has some fantastic lines in this. I think it's great when he's talking. He's watching a press conference of himself. Well, it's fascinating to watch him watch himself.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
That element of the doc is just perfect. But he's watching this press conference, and some cheeky reporter says, she's like, would you say you're more satisfied now? And the whole media team, like they erupt in laughter. It's a good topical joke. Top of the charts is their song Satisfaction. And he says, he's like, do you mean am I satisfied sexually or philosophically? And she's like, yeah, sexually, financially, and philosophically. He's like, yes, we're much more satisfied sexually, financially dissatisfied, and philosophically trying. And then it cuts back to him watching himself, and he's like, rubbish. Charlie, he's good to know, isn't he? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the drummer Charlie Watts is
Charlie's great.
Such a sweet guy.
He's the coolest cucumber I've ever seen. Like, he is so stoic in his emotions. A really crazy fun fact that I learned in doing research on this doc and on the event, in 2008, a retired FBI agent wrote a piece where he said that they had information that there was a plot to murder Mick Jagger in retribution for the lack of support that the Hells Angels got in the aftermath. And not just like there was some harebrained scheme, like it failed, and that's why it didn't take place. So the plot involved a boat. So Hells Angels guys were going to get on a boat and go right up to whatever villa that Mick Jagger was renting on Long Island, New York, and they were going to kill him at his house, like where he was staying.
My God.
And they got caught in a storm and the boat almost sank. That's the reason that it didn't go through.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Now,
wait, how does that involve Charlie?
It doesn't.
Oh, okay.
No,
okay.
it doesn't.
Okay.
No, I just did
Sorry, I thought it did.
No, it was a sidebar. No.
That's fascinating.
Well, Charlie would have been devastated.
He would have been so sad. Poor little
I
Tate.
think Charlie would have had a few things to say about it in his stoic way.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
The Hells Angels were that.
They were mad.
They were that mad about the bad PR
Mm-hmm.
that they're responsible for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, they got so brutal at that concert. I don't know what they were expecting as far as press coverage.
If it weren't so terrible, I would love the fact that they had pool cues with them. Like, that's kind of a hilarious and awesome use as a weapon.
Yeah.
Like they're like biker ninjas almost.
Yeah, so they're bow staffs. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you see it in practice and it's just brutal.
Ugh.
It's just beating people with clubs.
No, it's real bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Can we talk about how scalding hot Tina Turner is?
Oh, yes. Oh, I didn't expect that going into Gimme Shelter. It was such a lovely surprise. Her performance is electric. I actually have seen some spoofs of festivals. I'm actually thinking of, there's a Bob's Burgers episode where Bob is working a food truck at a festival, and there is a woman giving a performance that's very similar to the performance Tina Turner gave in Gimme Shelter, where it's
hypersexual.
Yeah. Very
She's
hypersexual.
basically giving a hand job to the microphone and the mic stand
And vocalizing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was hot. It was amazing.
Yeah.
You should watch that. If you
Wow.
haven't seen it yet.
I'm sweating.
Watch it.
Well, I mean, she's an absolute bombshell, and she's like, well, she's Beyonce before Beyonce was
Absolutely.
Beyonce.
Oh, she's
and we
just
think so of our
incredible
generation.
force.
It's so easy to think of Tina Turner of the 80s and 90s when she's got the when she's got the blonde highlights.
Yeah.
She's basically Tina blonde, but you go back 20 years and she's Tina, the soulful hippie chick.
Ike and Tina.
The best. So Ike Turner is notorious for beating Tina.
That's not good.
It's real bad.
It's bad.
But my favorite Onion title to an article I've ever seen, it was announcing Ike Turner's passing away, and it said, "Ike beats Tina to death."
Oh my God, that's so bad. Oh, the Onion. May we always.
That's the best worst Onion headline I've ever seen. Okay, next time on Festival Rap Notes, what we're going to cover is The Last Waltz by Martin Scorsese, about the band's last concert in 1978. How's that sound to you?
Sounds great.
Cool. This is Hot Mike. This has been Festival Rap Notes. We're out.
Bye.